I always thought peace had a sound. For me, it was the creak under my bridge, the slow groan of wood when my truck crossed, and the breeze moving through the pines behind my cabin. For 15 years, that bridge carried nothing heavier than my pickup and a few kids on bikes until one morning I heard a deep grinding roar that didn't belong. I stepped outside, coffee still in hand, and there she was, Patricia Langford, the HOA president, sitting high in the cab of a cement truck, waving like she was doing me a favor. By the time I reached the porch, the bridge was trembling, mud swirling in the water. When I told her she was trespassing, she smirked and said, "Then maybe you should build a stronger bridge, Richard." That's when I realized it wasn't about concrete. It was about control. That bridge wasn't just wood and bolts. It was a promise. My dad and I built it the year I bought this land, sunk the pilings ourselves, tightened every carriage bolt by hand. When it was done, I told him, now I can come home without asking anyone's permission. He grinned and said, "Then make sure you keep it that way." For 15 quiet years, I did, until the HOA came along. The Maple Ridge Community Association, a bunch of folks who liked the idea of shared vision a little too much. Patricia got herself elected president faster than a storm rolls downhill, and within a month she was sending letters about non-compliant structures and community ingress. One of those letters had a picture of my bridge. I wrote back politely with the county survey attached. Her response, "We'll discuss this at the next meeting." At that meeting, she stood with a laminated map so wrong it was almost funny. The creek was drawn like a cartoon snake, no scale, no bearings. She tapped it with her pen and said, "As you can see, both sides of the bridge serve as access points for community amenities. That makes it HOA property." I held up my survey official stamps, coordinates, everything. "As you can see, Patricia, my property line extends 50 feet beyond this creek. The bridge is private." She smiled that smile people use when they think they're smarter than you. "We'll take it under advisement," she said, which I later learned was HOA code for "we'll do what we want." 2 weeks later, the first cement truck crossed. The boards rattled like a drum, the water churned gray with mud, and the driver waved at me like we were old friends. I put up a sign that said, "Private Bridge 5-ton limit. Trespassers will be prosecuted." I even chained it off with a padlock. By noon, the lock was cut and the sign was gone. In its place, Patricia had zip-tied a pastel notice, "Non-compliance, unauthorized, restrictive device remove within 24 hours. I took photos of everything. Because I knew paper can lie, pictures don't. Soon the neighborhood split like wet wood. Half supported me, the other half thought I was being difficult. One guy posted online, "Bridges are meant to be crossed." Yeah, well, so are boundaries apparently. Patricia kept pushing scheduled access improvements, hired trucks, and acted like my driveway was a community park. When I confronted her, she said, "You're obstructing progress." I told her progress doesn't mean you can steal what isn't yours. She rolled up her window and told the driver to keep going. That truck was at least 12 tons, and my bridge was creaking like it was praying for mercy. That night, I called my friend Marcus, a retired engineer who helped me build it. We crawled underneath with flashlights, inspecting every beam. The structure was fine, but Marcus looked at me and said, "She's not gonna stop, you know." I nodded. Then I guess I won't either. The next morning, I started my counterplan, not with lawyers, but with physics. I modified the central reinforcement plates, removed a few non-critical bolts, so that anything heavier than 10 tons would cause a controlled sag. Not collapse, just a warning. I also installed 2 hidden cameras, one under the deck, one aimed at the approach. If she wanted to challenge me, she'd be walking right into her own evidence. 2 days later, she did. Patricia led another convoy of trucks herself, clipboard in hand, shouting directions like she was building the Hoover Dam. I watched from the porch as the first truck rolled onto the bridge. The boards bowed but held. The second truck followed, and that's when physics spoke. A shear pin snapped with a clean metallic crack, and the midspan dipped just enough to tip the load forward. The truck lurched and half its cement spilled into the creek below like gray lava. Patricia screamed, "You sabotaged this!" I walked toward her calm as a Sunday sermon and said, "Patricia, you sabotaged common sense." She called the cops. When the deputy arrived, he took one look at my posted sign and said, "Ma'am, this bridge is private property. He's within his rights." Patricia's jaw tightened, and for a moment I swear I saw something crack behind her perfect smile. The next day, the video hit the internet. HOA president's cement truck falls into creek. It blew up. I didn't post it, but someone did. Comments poured in. Instant karma, gravity wins again, classic HOA overreach. I made myself a drink and toasted the screen. But Patricia wasn't done. The HOA fined me $25,000 for damaging community property. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my bourbon. Then I printed their letter and pinned it to the fridge like a trophy. She even filed a lawsuit claimed reckless endangerment. The county inspector came out, checked everything, and cleared me completely. "Bridge is solid," he said. "If anything, it's overbuilt." Patricia showed up mid-inspection, heels sinking in the gravel, red-faced and shaking. "This structure collapsed," she shouted. The inspector just pointed at the bridge, standing strong, and said, "Looks fine to me." Still, she pressed on emails, flyers, even drones hovering over my property. It was like living next to a soap opera with a legal budget. Finally, her big moment arrived, court day. I wore my clean flannel. She showed up in a crimson blazer that practically screamed, "I'm right." Her lawyer argued I'd sabotaged community infrastructure. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Laura, handed the judge my deed photos and camera footage. When the video played, the cement spilling, Patricia screaming, the courtroom went silent, except for one guy's quiet snort of laughter. Then came the real twist. Laura presented the original HOA map, the one Patricia had secretly altered to include my land. The treasurer had leaked it to me after getting cold feet. The judge looked at both maps and said, "This boundary shift is illegal." Case dismissed. He even suggested investigating the HOA for document tampering. Patricia turned pale as drywall. When the gavel fell, I didn't celebrate. I just looked at her and said, "Next time, follow the sign." But that wasn't the end. A week later, she called an emergency HOA meeting to appeal the injustice. The hall was packed, neighbors, reporters, everyone hungry for drama. She stood at the front, voice trembling but defiant, saying, "The court's decision was based on incomplete evidence." I let her finish, then walked to the front with an envelope in hand. "Actually," I said, "here's the evidence you missed." On the projector, I showed a federal permit, my bridge officially classified as a private access corridor under state and federal law. Meaning not only was it mine, but the creek beneath it wasn't even under HOA jurisdiction. Gasps rippled through the crowd. One board member shouted, "You used HOA funds for a private lawsuit." Another added, "Is that why the maintenance budget vanished?" Patricia tried to talk, but the room had already turned. Within minutes, they voted to remove her as president. When it was over, she passed me in the parking lot, eyes cold. "You think this is over?" she hissed. I smiled. "For you, maybe." A week later, the new HOA board sent me a letter, not a threat this time, but an apology. "We acknowledge your ownership," it said, "and regret the actions of our former president." They even enclosed a check for $1,000 to cover my legal fees. I didn't cash it. I framed it, right next to a photo of the bridge standing strong as ever. These days, the neighborhood's quiet again. The drones are gone. The tennis court project's dead. Folks wave when they pass. Sometimes I'll sit on the railing with a cup of coffee, watching the water shimmer below, listening to the bridge creak like an old friend stretching its back. And every so often I think about Patricia, the way pride can make people drive straight into their own downfall. You know, people keep asking me if it was revenge. It wasn't. It was just balance, the kind nature and gravity and force without taking sides. So here's my advice: when someone crosses your line, don't shout louder. Stand firmer. Because truth, like a well-built bridge, doesn't need defending. It just needs to hold. Now tell me, what would you have done? Was I right to let her learn the hard way, or should I have just rebuilt and moved on? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one of them. And if you've ever had your own HOA Karen moment, trust me, you're not alone. Sometimes peace isn't found by avoiding conflict. Sometimes it's built plank by plank and guarded with patience.